Hi everyone. In this video, we are going to use Power Automate to create a tab in a Teams channel that will embed a SharePoint document library. There is no native connector action in Power Automate that will let us achieve this. So we are going to use Azure Entra ID and Microsoft Graph API via Power Automate HTTP actions to achieve this. The resulting flow will look like something like what you see here on the screen. We'll build this together, start to finish. So let's get started. This is my channel here, this channel called Automate Account. And the tab that we're going to create is going to be right here next to this Notes tab. And in order to do this, we need to start out in Azure, Microsoft Azure Entra ID. Here under Manage, you can see App Registrations. And we're going to start by creating a new registration. And now the name of this application can be literally anything that you want. I just named mine based on the actions that we're trying to accomplish. So this is going to be just called Create Team Channel SharePoint tab. Create Teams Channel SharePoint tab. I'm going to leave this setting for accounts in my organization only, single tenant, and we're going to go down and click register at the bottom. Once we've done that, we're going to need to set up the app permissions. So you can see under the manage section, there's API permissions. We're going to go there. Now we're going to add permissions here by clicking the add permission button. And the permission is going to be a Microsoft Graph API. So we select that. Now in my case, I'm having a single user who is the signed in user, who is the one that is running all the flows for my organization. So that's what you would select if that's your case. Otherwise, you want to select application permissions to run as a background service without a signed in user. So I'm going to click on delegated permissions here. So now we're going to search for some permissions. So there's a number of permissions that we may need. Not all of them may be necessary. You can look at the documentation, the Microsoft Graph documentation, to tell you which ones exactly you're going to need. But if we just search in the directory permissions, we're going to do directory read write all, add permission, and then we're going to add a few more. So I'm going to skip forward so you can see which ones I've added here after I'm done adding them in. Okay, now you can see all of the ones that I've added are listed out right here. And these are the ones that if you add, you'll be able to have the right permissions to create the tab in Teams. And you'll notice under the status column, it says not granted for my organization. And in order to make this work, I need to grant admin consent for my organization. That's the button right here. Now, you might not be able to do this if your user is not an admin. So in that case, you'll have to get your organization's admin to do this. So we're going to do this for all of them. Now we're all set here. Now, the next thing that we need to do is create a client secret. So on the same menu off to the side, we have certificates and secrets. So let's click there. And then we're going to do add a new client secret. And then we put in a description. And this description can be anything that you want it to be. So I'm just going to do consume Teams API. And I'm going to set this to the farthest out so I don't have to worry about it expiring anytime soon. And then I'm just going to click add. Now that's going to generate a unique value here and a unique secret ID, which we will need later on to pass into our Power Automate flow. So for right now, that's all we need from the Azure Entra side of things. So we're going to go back to Power Automate, and we're going to create a manually triggered flow. And of course, you can set this up to have any trigger that you need. But for the sake of just this example and testing, we're just going to be using a manual trigger. So the first action that we need is our HTTP action. That's going to be this one right here. Now your flow is going to have two HTTP actions. The first one is the one we're setting up right now, is going to post the access token. And we need that access token to pass to our second HTTP action, which is the one that will post the Teams tab in your channel. So let's walk through setting up this HTTP action, which I'm going to rename access token, and the method is going to be post, and the URI is going to be this URL here. And you can see that we need a tenant ID. Now, before I grab our tenant ID, I'm going to go up here and add a note. And the note is going to say that the URI is this URL here. And that will help me to know for future reference, future maintenance, that the number following this .com URL is the tenant ID, because we're going to add the tenant ID here. Now, for the sake of this video, I'm going to add in the tenant ID later. So for right now, I'm just going to put in a random 1, 2, 3, just so that you know where to paste in your tenant ID. You get your tenant ID, you need to go back to Azure, your Azure app that you created. And on the overview page, you can see the directory tenant ID is right here. And at the end of that ID, there's a little copy to clipboard button. So you can click that to copy that ID, go back here and paste it in right where it says tenant ID. And that will get you set up. Now at the end, before we run the flow, I will replace this with my actual tenant ID so that you can we can actually run the flow. Now the next thing that we need to finish setting up this action is a header, and the header is called content-type, and this will be in the description down below, as well as the value for this header, which is what I'm pasting in here. Again, will be located in the description down below. And then finally, your body. And the body, which is also located in the description, is this here. So now you can see that we need two IDs. One is client secret, one is client ID, and one is client secret. And I have another note to add up to the top here, so I can track that. And that note is in the body, client secret is equal to client value, which can be found next to the client secret ID. And the reason I'm putting that note in there is because it's easy to confuse the client secret with the client value. And I'll show you what I mean. So we need to grab first the client ID. If we go back to Azure, the client ID is going to be on our overview page. It's going to be this ID right here. And once again, we can click copy to clipboard. So I'll go ahead and copy that. And I'm going to paste it into here. But for now, I'm just going to put a placeholder 1, 2, 3, 4. And I'll update this before we run. Now we need the client secret. So to get that, we go back to Azure and we go to the manage certificates and secrets, and we copy this value right here, not the secret ID, but the value that's right here. We copy that and paste it in here. And once again, I'm just going to add a 1, 2, 3, 4 and paste in my actual client secret later. Now, the next step that we need to do is we need to run this. And once we run it, we grab the outputs of the body, and we're going to need to parse the JSON in order to obtain our access token. So we're going to run this flow. And then I'm going to click on the action, and I'm going to scroll to where it says outputs. And then we have the little copy here that we can copy this. Now that I've copied it, I'm going to edit my flow. And now I'm going to add in a parse JSON action. And where it says use sample payload to generate schema, open that up and then paste in your JSON outputs. And then it will generate this little template here, little schema there. And then where it says content to create schema from, the dynamic values of the body of our HTTP access token. Now that we've done that, I like to add an additional step that's not necessary, but for troubleshooting, it can make troubleshooting easier. I'm going to add a compose. And this compose, because we're trying to obtain the access token. So this compose is going to just literally be the access token, which is the dynamic content from our parse JSON. So if we click dynamic content, parse JSON, there it says body access token. That's what we want. So if I save and test this one more time, just to make sure that it's generating that token, that can be something that's very helpful to do, as opposed to just passing the dynamic content of the access token from the parse JSON directly into our final HTTP action. So we're just going to click on that, and we can see that there's the outputs. There's our long access token. And then we're going to click edit, and then we'll add in our final step. So we search again, HTTP. And this is going to be our create Teams tab, SharePoint folder. Well, actually, SharePoint directory. It's a folder, but it's a directory. Now, the URI that we need is the one that I'm going to grab off, that I have off to the side, and then I'm going to paste it in here. And this is the one you can find in the description below. And I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to add a note, and I'm going to put the URI equals this, because we're going to have to get our Teams ID and our channel ID. You could add in additional actions that will get those for you. In this case, I'm just hard coding those. So if I go over to Teams, and here's the channel, and I click more options, and then I click get link to channel, that's going to show my channel ID. So I can go ahead and I can copy that channel ID and hop back over to Power Automate, and I can even indicate that here is my channel ID, but the channel ID is actually a little bit different. So let's actually insert that first here. And the channel ID, now where you see this code here is for some URL that we need to replace. So from where it says %3a, I need to remove that, and I'm going to replace it with a colon. because that's the code in the URL, which equals the colon. So it's going to look like what you see here. Now we need to also get our team ID. And getting the team ID is a little bit more tricky. So what we can do for that is go to graph. And then if we search in team, Microsoft Teams, let's do get my join teams and run query. Now, you have to be signed in. I'm not signed in. So let me sign in quick. And now that I'm signed in, I'll run this query. And then it's going to list all the teams that I'm a member of. So I need to actually scroll down to find my specific one. And then here's the PA testing. That's the display name of that channel. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this and then hop back over here and then paste that in right here. So now we have our URI set up. I'm going to get rid of these here. We want to make a note on how I had to change that code in the URL to get the channel ID. You can make a note of that. Now this is going to be method post. And then headers, we have two headers. We have one that's called authorization. And then the value is going to be bearer and then a space. And then we do the access token here. So I'm just going to grab the access token, the compose access token outputs. And then one more header, which is content dash type. And this one is application slash JSON. And the last thing is going to be our body. This will be in the description of the video as well. I'm going to paste it in here. And I'm going to just modify a few things here. So the display name is going to be the name of the tab, however you want that to be. In this case, I'm just going to call it SharePoint. Now, the next thing is the Teams app at odata.bind. And this is going to require the Teams app ID for SharePoint. And that's going to be what you see on the screen right there. I'm indicating that up here in the URI as well, just to clarify what that number is. And then for entity ID, that can just be anything that you want it to be. I'm just gonna call it automate_account because I'm gonna have like some dynamic content later on that's going to create this value based on some username stuff. And so that's what I'm gonna put it in here now. This is just the first and last name of my account. Now we have 3 URLs. We have contentUrl, we have website URL, and we have removeURL. And all 3 of these are essentially the same, but the third one, removeURL, ends with /remove. And the URL is going to be whatever you want, whatever SharePoint URL you want to use. So we go over to SharePoint, and what I want to link to is this folder right here. And so I'm going to grab this folder, this URL, and I'm going to go here and I'm going to paste it into each one between the quotes for all 3 of these. And now that I've done that, I can save and test and run flow. Now that we have a successful run, we can go over to our teams here and we can take a look at our automate account. And here is the SharePoint tab that was created, which is successfully opening where our automate account folder is, as I showed you in SharePoint. All right, that's going to do it for this video. Thanks everyone for watching, And as always, we will see you in the next video. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.